Hello out there to everyone. Today is National Girls and Women in Sports Day, and I am so excited to be a woman who was once a girl and who did play sports. And I'm also excited to be joined by some students from the Pittsburgh area at Carnegie Mellon University who are also in sports. And so we are going to be just having a great conversation about what it's like to be a woman engaged in sports. We definitely want to acknowledge today as a day that recognizes women and girls, but we want to extend that maybe and recognize women and girls a little bit longer than one day. So we're going to have to work on that one. But I was on the website and I saw some really interesting statistics that I want to share first, and then we'll get into some good conversation. Some of the things didn't surprise me, but there was one that did surprise me. So 40% of teen girls do not participate in sports when they're younger. 90% of colleges do not offer athletic opportunities to females at the same rate to their male athletes. 40% of female athletes report anxiety and or depression. 24% of all head coaches at the college level are women. So that's 24%, not 50%. And then the one that really surprised me was 3.2. So that's like less than 5% of sports media is devoted to women's sports. So I'm excited that the Carnegie Mellon University student athletes reached out to the YWCA of Greater Pittsburgh to get that percentage of media up for the women. So thank you for joining me today. I'm going to start off just going one by one with each of you so that our audience can learn a little bit about you. So if you could tell the audience a little bit about yourself, specifically your major in college, because I think it's important for people to know what women in sports study and what sport you're in. And then that way people will get to know you a little bit. So we'll start off with Taylor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Jacobs. I'm a junior and I'm from Bozeman, Montana. I study chemical engineering and I have a minor in supply chain management, and I run cross country and track at CMU.
Nice. Thank you, Taylor. And we'll go to Divya.
Hi, I'm Divya Seenivasan. I'm a sophomore on the women's basketball team. I am from Bridgewater, New Jersey, and I'm studying business administration, and I'm thinking of pursuing a concentration in marketing.
Nice. Thank you. And we'll go to Helena.
Hi, my name is Helena Spencer. I'm a sophomore. I'm from, Northern Virginia, and I'm studying information systems with a minor in SHIFT, which stands for Societal and Human Impacts of Future Technologies.
Wow, that sounds pretty intense, but amazing. Thank you so much. And Liz.
Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Jankowski. I'm Pittsburgh born and raised. I'm majoring in business administration with concentrations in both finance and accounting, and I'm minoring in Hispanic studies, and I'm a junior on the women's volleyball team.
Nice. So we have a good representation of sports here. So you mentioned that you were studying Spanish, Liz, is that true?
Yes, I am.
Do we have any other second language speakers or second language learners in the room? No? Okay.
I know a little Spanish from family, but
say that again.
I know a little Spanish from family and high school classes, but not like a major or anything.
Nice. Thank you. All righty, so we're going to just jump right into some of our questions so that we can help our audience learn more about women and girls in sports from a college student perspective. So we'll start with Helena. Tell me a little bit about your personality and why you chose the sport you chose.
Yeah, so I would kind of consider myself a outgoing person, sociable, love people. I feel like I'm kind of creative. I like coming up with random things, maybe like inventions one day that might make it out into the world. But as for the sport that I play, I would say I started loving the sport in about kindergarten, maybe that time area, because I'd play with actually boys at recess. And so they just got me into it. And then ever since then, it was a progression of like rec soccer into competitive soccer and then now collegiate soccer. So I love it.
Nice. It's funny you say that. I actually grew up with 4 brothers, and I back in the day, I would have been called a tomboy. And I am sure that I suspect that my involvement in sports was probably because of my, engagement with them, and, just wanting to be busy and run around and do something fun.
Yeah, I get that very often, saying I'm a tomboy and stuff. So I'm like, okay, I'd consider myself half and half, but whatever.
Right. Can we get one more to share about that? You guys can pick who shares. Somebody who's dying to answer that question.
I can go just because the way I got into my sport is a pretty interesting story. So I have a very outgoing personality. I love to talk to people. I'm pretty loud. When I was younger, my coaches used to call me the Energizer Bunny because I had so much energy. And because of that, when I was 2 years old, my mom was worried I was going to hurt myself because I'd be running around our house all day. And so she actually put me in a ballet class, and I was a ballerina up until I was 14 years old. And I really liked it because it helped me build strength, not as much the whole graceful, dainty part. I was never that kind of dancer. I was always a little bit more athletic. And when I was in 4th grade, I ended up trying out volleyball because a lot of my friends were doing it at school, and I had tried a lot of different sports before, like basketball. I wasn't the biggest fan. Running, I realized I don't like running around a track. Soccer I was 5, so I barely remembered it. But when I joined volleyball, it just kind of clicked for me that, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do, because you could combine the athletic parts from dancing along with the team aspect of being able to work with a bunch of people. And since then, I knew that I wanted to continue in the sport. And when I was in 8th grade, I knew that I wanted to play in college. And I really started working towards that. And it worked out because I'm at Carnegie Mellon now.
Nice. I love how you talked about dance. I have a dance background myself, but I do know from my background and from, moving out of dance into a fitness career at one point in my lifetime, how important it is and how many coaches do understand and appreciate how dance can help with the athlete, both male and female, in terms of balance, in terms of, understanding your core, and strength for sure. So thank you for adding that. So shout out to all the dancers out there, and all those people who are dancing for those reasons, as well as dancing for the joy of dance. All right, so let's move into another question. And this one will be for Divya. Can you talk about what or who inspired you or influenced you when you were a teenager to get involved in sports?
Yeah, so when I was like in my younger teens, I would say I was pretty shy, definitely more shy than I am now. And I think like my parents were someone who kind of encouraged me to do sports. They were like very supportive of me trying out new sports, but someone who kind of like really inspired me to take on like specifically basketball with like a positive mindset was 2 of my friends from middle school. I think I just like saw them and I saw how they were enjoying playing basketball, and they were like, you should come try out for the team, it'll be so much fun. And I kind of thought as like, okay, like this will be a great chance to hang out with my friends. But honestly, it was really cool to see how passionate they were, and I feel really lucky to have been given that opportunity. And like I feel like basketball is one of the most important things in my life now. So I'm glad I kind of got to take that step and try something new.
That's a great story. I love how you talked about, what friends do for you and how important friends are in your life, just in terms of, how they encourage you, how they are role models for you. And that was a nice story to see how connected you were to your friends and to visualize their passion. It also made me think, I do remember as a teenager going to see my brothers play basketball, pickup basketball in the neighborhood basketball court. And that might have been how I got involved in basketball because, I literally just loved watching the guys play basketball. And so when I went to school, actually, there's probably another reason because I went to a small school and I think they only had basketball for girls. There was no other sport. So I was like, I'm in. I really wanted to do track, but they didn't have track. I remember that. I wanted my mother to change my school so I could go to a school that had track. She was like, no, you're going to this school. All right, so we'll go to Taylor for this next question. And this one is around diversity in your teams. So either in, if you played in high school or younger years, or even in college, can you talk about if there was diversity within your team and how that was for you?
So as a kid, not really. I grew up in Montana, and unfortunately, it's not a very diverse state, and that's something that I kind of wish I had more of as a kid. But I actually went to boarding school in Connecticut for high school. So I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by a more group of diverse people there. And track is interesting in itself because it pulls people from all sorts of backgrounds because there's so many different events that you can do. And so you can really, the throwers definitely, I'm not a thrower. I don't look like them. I do very different things than they do. But it really gives you an opportunity to kind of meet with people who do all sorts of different things. So I was fortunate there. So kind of as I've grown up, my teams have become more diverse in a sense. And I've really enjoyed kind of that experience and getting to talk to people with different passions and different interests than I initially had, initially had the exposure of.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing where you came from in your hometown. That's so important to know that oftentimes, unless we leave where we came from, we don't really get a different perspective and we don't really get to see how, the rest of the country, the rest of the world, lives and is. And you really talked about how you appreciated that learning for yourself. And that's important for everybody to know that once we move out of our own, I always call it bubble. When we move out of our own bubble, we start to really explore and start to really get inspired by all of those people who speak and look different than us. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, can I actually add on to that?
Yes, you may, Helena.
Yeah, so I come from a military background, so I've literally had no bubble I guess I stay in. I've been in my entire life. So I was fortunate enough to basically travel the world, both coasts of the United States, like California, Virginia, and then like Arizona. And then at one point we also lived in Japan. And so that was really, I know, yeah. So it was a really cool eye-opening experience for me because it was like, I lived on base, which is like where more of the Americans lived with the military families, but we were allowed to like go off base and kind of explore the surrounding culture. And then I did gymnastics at the time, so I was able to do gymnastics with some of the girls there. And it's just kind of crazy, the different lifestyles, but also so amazing because you're like, wow, like you don't get this in the United States. So I love that.
Very nice. My dad was in the Air Force and we traveled from coast to coast, but we didn't get any international experiences. So I'm super jealous. But so nice again to have that experience and to be able to have that be part of who you are growing up and to be able to have opportunities to share that and what it was like for you and how you can, help other people to grow and think about that in positive ways is so cool. Nice. Thank you. When we talk about athletic resources, opportunities or support, that could be financial or it even could be role models, but we'll talk with Liz. Can you share any of those athletic resources or opportunities that have been made available to you as a female athlete?
Yeah, I've been so fortunate that I have had a lot of resource and really good role models to kind of use throughout my high school career. And ever since I started playing, I had a different coach for school and for club every single year. So that was kind of hard adjusting to that every single practice felt like a tryout, which I think is really good for me now because it taught me how to perform under pressure if I treat everything like it's a big tryout. And because of that, I kind of wanted some consistent volleyball training because every single coach tried to teach me different things. So I'm so fortunate that when I went to my volleyball club, Pittsburgh Elite, I met Jen Flynn Oldenburg, who played at Ohio State, was on the US national team, almost went to the Olympics, but she decided she didn't want to for personal reasons. She had moved back to Pittsburgh at the time, and she was very new to the club. And my dad was talking to the director and was like, who should my kid go with? And then she said, oh, I have the perfect person. Her name's Jen. She just moved from here. Your daughter reminds me a lot of her. So when I was 15, I started working with her, and I worked with her all the way throughout high school into college. And she's taught me so much, not just about volleyball, but just about collegiate athletics before I went there, because she also coached at Illinois as an assistant coach. And she also just taught me, you know, how to be a better person, how to work in a team, how to have a court IQ, how to have those skills of being a woman, to be able to stand up and voice your opinion, because unfortunately there aren't as many female coaches who are in collegiate athletics as we would like. But she actually just went back to Ohio State because she got hired as their head volleyball coach. So the fact that she was able to teach me and serve as a role model, and even now serving as a role model, not only for me, but for so many girls who came from Pittsburgh because she grew up here, that now she's the head coach of Ohio State, which is a very good volleyball school in her alma mater. So the fact that I had access to her was something that was so, so special to me. And with that, she also had me do some coaching opportunities where she got me into coaching when I was 16. I volunteered at my club. And then when I was 18, I got put on the staff officially, and I got to lead a bunch of different programs, which is something that not very many people my age can say. I'm so lucky that I've been able to do that. And because of that, one of my big focuses after I graduate is becoming a coach. I think it's so important to be able to give back, because I've had some really great coaches and I've had some really bad coaches. I'm like, okay, let's start to get rid of some of these bad ones and introduce more good ones in. And so I still coach out at Pitt Elite whenever I can. I also, throughout high school, I want to say from my junior, senior year, I coached down at the West Penn Recreation Center for girls who come from lower socioeconomic statuses. As a volunteer position, my coach had asked our entire team. I was the only one who volunteered, and originally I did it kind of to get my 10 hours of community service, but then I decided to stay. And one day he asked me, he's like, oh, do you have the community service you need? I was like, I had it after week 3. I just really loved the girls here and decided to stay. So I've been super, super fortunate to have a lot of resources that I know a lot of people don't necessarily get. And because of that, I wanted to kind of give back with like my knowledge, my time, and my experience to people in the greater Pittsburgh area. Sorry, that was kind of a long answer.
No, that was a great story for sure. You know, your dad talked about how that, or the other person at the place talked about how that coach would be good for you because you reminded them of her, or she reminded you of her. I forget how you phrase that, but I think that that's definitely a testament to say that it is important for young girls to have role models who are like them, who remind them of themselves, who look like them, who come from similar backgrounds. So that is definitely an important piece. And then the giving back to the community is also so important, to be able to volunteer and to be able to go to a community that's not like the community that you're from, and really give back in a way that connects you and engages you with people who are different than you. And you expressed it so well, how you fell in love with the girls and you stayed with it. And I think that that's also a good testament to what it's like to do something that's out of your comfort zone and takes you somewhere else and allows you to really grow yourself as well as support others in their growth. So thank you. That was a great answer. I'm going to hang on for 1 minute because my husband's phone is down here and it keeps ringing. And so I can't call him to tell him it's down here because it's down here. So he's down here. So I'm going to ask you to please get your phone so it's not ringing. Thank you. The Zoom world, right? It's all about the families. All All right, so let's move on. Does somebody else want to chime in on that question? I don't want to miss an opportunity.
I can. I just want
Taylor.
to say that I think as an athlete, you are provided kind of other opportunities kind of within your school to do all sorts of things. So like we've been able to participate in a lot of community service events, and also maybe for some of us it helped us get into college, which is something that wasn't explicitly said yet. And I think that that can be really valuable, that it can also go with your education. And that's something that I'm really grateful for, that I've been able to kind of do this sport that I love while also, you know, learning and bettering myself. And I think that simple things like that as an athlete, combined with also kind of the friendships and the relationships and the community that you build, are just a really important about being an athlete, and kind of just in a simple sense, just little things like that I think I really value, and I'm really grateful for, to have those experiences and those things given back to me as I've enjoyed what I do. So
Yeah, that's a good point, and definitely something that can be helpful in terms of educating communities who might not be aware of that, that sometimes college scholarship is going to help get you to college. And so if you don't think about that, or if you don't know about that, then you wouldn't pursue that. Everything reminds me of a story. So when my older son was visiting colleges, we went to this one college. It was a private college. They had no scholarships. They said that it's a private college, you got to pay. So we probably weren't going to go there, but they did say there was one full scholarship for an oboe player, right? So you just never know. You just never know, right? So thank you for that response, Taylor. We're going to move to another question, opportunities. Okay, so this question is really about when you think about yourself and the sports you've been in and the teams you've been on in the trajectory of your life this far, did you ever personally feel racially or gender marginalized? And then how, or have you witnessed it with someone, another team member, being impacted by that? And how was that for you? I'm going to open this up to whoever wants to answer that, because that's a tough one.
Yeah, so fortunately, I have grown up in New Jersey surrounded by people that are really supportive, and I haven't really like felt that uncomfortable in my environment or anything. But I think sometimes just like when you walk into a room, sometimes you like notice, like I think when I was younger, when I first got into basketball, I'd walk into like a tournament of like, it'd be like 20 different teams of girls, and I'd look around and I'd think to myself like, oh my gosh, I'm the only Indian girl in this entire room.
Nobody's brown like me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I like think about that, and it's like, I don't know, it's just like a lot of thoughts come into your head, and but in the end, I feel like I've been on teams, diverse or not, where my teammates are supportive and kind of everyone accepts each other's differences. Like at the end of the day, we're like all here to play basketball, everyone's friends. Like, so that's been like really helped me build my confidence in that as I grew up. And that's not something I really am like afraid of anymore. Like I feel confident in myself because of that. And I think like a lot of that is like your teammates empowering you, whether that's like silently or literally them expressing their support for you. And also like with that, like I think it's really important to like be on the lookout for your friends and like make sure everyone feels included, because like sports is like something where everyone can be themselves, everyone can show what abilities they have, everyone can have fun. And I think that can only happen when everyone is focused on creating an inclusive environment for each other.
Great answer. You know, I can tell you as an adult, every time I walk into a space, and many times I am the only person of color there. And when this is my story. So when I walk in, I don't have this perception in my mind that, oh my goodness, I'm going to be afraid if I'm the only person of color in there. But when you walk in, there's this feeling that you get that you can't like escape from, because it's so noticeable. And so that feeling is there, and it's kind of jarring at first, but then when you get a welcome, or when you start to be made welcome or included, it changes that altogether. And so I think how you expressed that, Divya, was really important, to say how in sports your teammates are really supportive of you, and that's what helps get you through. And also having that is what makes you stronger in terms of being in those environments where you get that feeling initially and you don't know what to do with it. And here's my story. When my youngest child was 2, we were in a church. It was a Catholic church. It was predominantly white. And I think it was, I forget who talked about their niece or nephew being so busy. Was it you, Liz? So that was my son. So he was 3 and he was like climbing all over me in church, and he like pulled my hair aside and he whispered in my ear. And you can imagine a whisper from a 2-year-old, "Mom, do you think anybody in here notices we're the only brown people?" I was like mortified because of course, there we were. And now he said it. So if they didn't notice, they've noticed through his words. So it was a funny moment. So even at age, he was either 2 or 3, children notice too. And so that's an important piece to think about, especially Liz, when you think about the work that you're doing in a community where there may be children who don't look different than you, they notice that. And so being able to help them with their own self-esteem and feel stronger and valued as a person in addition to their race is really important. So thanks for sharing that. Anyone else want to comment on that question?
Yeah, I'm gonna hop in, but take it more from the gender perspective versus
Yeah.
the race perspective. So unfortunately, when I was a sophomore in high school, we had a pretty abusive coach, physical, mental, sexual, like not good stuff. Not gonna get into the details, but I was only 15 at the time, and I just remember in practices, even the like day I met him, I was like, okay, something's off. Like this doesn't seem right. And when I would just tell some people about the stories that had happened in practice, they were like, oh, like like just you're probably overreacting because I was a girl and I was talking about this stuff. But I got so frustrated because I was like, yes, I am a girl, but that doesn't matter because I'm pretty freaking tough. I've had coaches tell me like, we can tell you're the Pittsburgh Plagues, you run around the bleachers, you like aren't afraid to like tell someone when they do something wrong. So like I'm not some like quiet, timid like person. And just kind of hearing some of those things over and over again, like, oh, you're overreacting, or girls, they just don't understand the difference between tough coaching and abusive coaching. And that really frustrated me because I'm an intelligent person. I can tell the difference between right and wrong. And my coach, who I talked about earlier, she was coached by him, and she even told me before, she said, when something happens to you or one of your teammates, you need to tell me, which I think was something that really just kind of helped me remember the fact that even if these people are saying this, I know my feelings are valid. I know what I'm seeing is in fact what I'm seeing. And with that, ultimately the administration, because there were issues, they came in and were like talking to me. And of course they were 2 males who were just talking to a 15-year-old girl. And we're like, oh, are you sure it's that bad? And I was like, yeah, it's that bad. And they were like, oh, do you need anything? And I was like, yeah. I was like, never hire someone like him again, because I knew that nobody else was really going to say that. Like, especially because girls so often feel like when they're going through issues like that sometimes that they're just not as tough as guys, but we are definitely just as tough as guys. In fact, I would argue that we are tougher sometimes. We have to deal with things like that. We have to deal with people saying hurtful comments. We have to deal with, body image issues, a whole host of issues that guys don't even think about for a second. And so I guess with that, the biggest moral of the story that I kind of learned for myself is that, what I'm feeling is right and nobody can take that away from me. And ultimately, he ended up getting fired, banned from coaching volleyball, thank God. But it took a long time to get there, and so many people just kind of trying to push it down. But, you have to speak up sometimes, especially when people are talking poorly about girls and stuff, because otherwise nothing gets done. Unfortunately, we have to be our own biggest allies. And I guess that's just kind of my story about the gender part.
Yeah, and that's a good message. And, you for sure, if those kinds of things have happened to you, they're happening across the United States, and definitely something for us to point out. And when I do racial justice workshops, I use the same messaging that they talk about gender justice. If you see something, say something. If you see something, do something. And so, as players on a team, as women in sports, it's going to be important for you all to make sure you're very attentive to justice as it relates to both gender and race. And if you're seeing that someone doesn't have the strength yet to speak up for themselves, then you have to help them out. And again, thinking about justice from a racial perspective and a gender perspective, go with your gut feeling. If it feels wrong, it's probably wrong. And so again, you've got to find the people that can that have the power to make change and make a difference, and make sure you get to that. So kudos to you for going with your gut instinct and taking a lead on that and really pursuing it through to the end and not being silent. There's so much wrong in the world for there to be people silently on the escalator going their own way with blinders on. So we all need to be aware of the things that are going around that are wrong. So thank you for putting yourself out there, Liz. I appreciate it.
Can I jump in with one more thing along that note?
Yes, Taylor.
So I was also like Lena, I was a competitive gymnast as a child. And so at the time I lived in LA, and I was training at kind of at a big gym down there with a lot of girls that ended up, Michaela Maroney was at my gym, who's an Olympic gymnast. And so it was a very tough environment. In second grade, I was going 40 hours a week to, it was like a full-time job. And at that gym, there were a lot of girls that were going to the Karoli camps, which I think we're all pretty familiar with the story of Larry Nassar. And I remember I was 7 or 8 years old. And I remember one year the girls coming back, and I remember the whole kind of tone of the gym shifted. And even at 8, I had no idea what was going on, but I just felt really uncomfortable. Because all of the girls also felt uncomfortable, kind of the culture had changed. And I mean, this was before we knew anything about what was really going on, but I vividly remember kind of just sitting in that gym feeling like something was wrong. And then in 2017, or I think that's when it was, 2017, that whole story came out. And I kind of just remember sitting there, like I vividly remember sitting in the library in high school, like years past my gymnastics experience, being like, this is what happened.
Yeah.
And even when you're 8 years old and don't know how to speak out about what's going on, and the fact that that could have been me, and that I have peers that are there, that whole thing was kind of jarring. And so that, like, just going along with your kind of statement that if you feel something is wrong, a lot of times it is. And like, girls, we support each other, and we know how that feels. And even at 8, I could tell. So
yeah, and there's a lot of research out there that talks about trauma around racial justice and gender justice, and those issues where people are treated unfairly. Like you said, even at age 8, you notice something, and so it sticks with you, and so it can create trauma. It can create sadness, especially if there's nowhere to take it and nowhere to go, and you feel like there's nothing to do, or you feel like you didn't do something that you thought you might have been able to do. So we have to give ourselves grace for sure, and be gentle and kind to ourselves, but we also have to know when we need someone else to help, because there are some things that we can't do, and so we do need the experts and the helpers out there. So great. Thank you for sharing that too, Taylor. A very good reminder to everybody who's listening that these are important things in the lives of girls and women. And we care about each other, and we care about justice. So thank you. This question is about role models in your experiences. Some of you did talk a little bit about it, but have you found diverse athletic role models that have changed you, or given you inspiration that you might not have had from someone who doesn't look like you or talk like you? Anybody want to share about that?
I can go ahead and talk about my role model. So growing up, I kind of had a late start to soccer, and so a lot of people had that kind of technical aspect down while I was still kind of trying to figure that out. Yeah, and so I had a lot of like private coaching on the side, so they definitely like helped. There's this one private coach in particular. Her name was Araceli Vasquez, I want to say is her last name. But she was a Latin she was older, and I know that she was so good that she kind of wanted to focus on coaching more instead of really trying to go into that professional realm. However, when I continued to stay with her, she had actually gone to some semi-pro teams that she played on, and then she still plays to this day. And so she's like, I want to say late 30s, maybe early 40s. And so just being able to like be coached by her growing up and her encouraging me to just kind of keep going and just providing that feedback on what I'm doing wrong, but in a positive way, really helped me like look forward to her or look up to her and kind of want to just follow in her footsteps. So if I ever had the chance to help coach anyone, I would definitely in a heartbeat do it. And then I don't know, just like I guess after college, if I guess going pro's hard, but like if there's like some local team to continue playing like she did, I would be very appreciated for that. So
Helena, I want to just, I ask you an extended question on that. So if you think about your time with her, have you had male coaches in your life?
I have actually more often than female.
Yeah, I figured that. So how would you compare, like what stands out from her that doesn't stand out in terms of your coaching by men?
Right. I would say the biggest thing, because I've had a solid 2 coaches that were women in my entire growing up. So her along with one of my high school coaches, they kind of just understand more what you're going through, but at the same time, they don't ease up on what they expect from you because they know what you can give, like they've been in your shoes. So that's definitely kind of given me more encouragement than from the male aspect because they can try to sympathize, but I don't think they fully get it. And then sometimes they feel like they need to ease up, but then sometimes they're too hard. So I feel like with female coaching, it's definitely they know exactly what you're going through. They know what to expect. So you kind of just appreciate that more as a player. And you're like, okay, like I can give my 110% with you or like for you right now kind of thing. So I would say that's the biggest difference.
Great. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
I have another role model. Obviously, I've talked about Jen a lot, but there's another coach who I'm very good friends with. He's so funny. His name is Victor Morales. He is born and from Brazil. He grew up there. Then he went to college in Africa and played professionally in Africa. And then he came to the United States. So, he's hit a lot of different areas in his life, and he's a part of the LGBTQ plus group. So, clearly very diverse guy. And he's very tough, which I like tough coaching. That's how I grew up. But he's also very real with you. And I think what really stuck out to me is part of the reason why he is so tough. It's not obviously sometimes it's if you mess up, but sometimes if he can just kind of see if somebody doesn't love the game or they're not fully invested in that moment, just because for him, like with everything that's happened in his life, like he loves volleyball. He loves volleyball probably more than me, which is very hard to believe because it's just been one of those constant factors for him, despite everything that had happened to him. And so a lot of times if he were to get really angry, it wouldn't be because you were necessarily doing something wrong, but it would be because he knew your heart wasn't in it. And that really, sticks out to me. I mean, obviously I've had a lot of coaches, love volleyball and stuff, but just for him, just his entire story of how he got to where he is and the fact that he's very open about his story, which, for a lot of people in that situation, that can be really tough because you don't know what people are going to think about you. But luckily, I haven't seen anything where he has kind of been discriminated because of that. But just the fact that, a coach like him exists out there, I think that speaks a lot to a lot of different people just because like it helps if you kind of see that representation out there, especially in a sport where, a lot of the coaches kind of look the same, especially on the male side. So yeah, he's just a role model for me just because of everything he's been through and how much he just loves the game.
Nice, thank you. So Helena also talked about her global experience, international experience in sports. And then Liz, you just mentioned a coach who's had an international background as a player and a coach, and who's bringing that to you. And so both are highlights to how much the difference and the diversity in how we connect ourselves and how we engage with other people really is so important in who we are as a person, how open we are to others, and how welcoming we are to people, again, who are different than us. So many of you talked about coaches, and some of you talked about being open to be a coach. Did anybody want to share some thoughts about, like, what would the message be for you, from you, to young girls who are either who never thought about themselves engaging in sports, who think that that's just for boys, or who, you know, need some inspiration from someone who's in it? What, I'm going to ask all of you to share something about that.
I would say like sports is just a great opportunity for you to like feel confident in yourself and have something that is like yours. Like sometimes I just feel like basketball can just be like my thing, and like that makes me really happy because like I like having something to focus on. I like setting goals, and like I feel like the sport, my teammates, my coaches, just like my experiences have helped me like just build my confidence and feel like I'm strong, I'm powerful, I can do anything. So like I think that would be my biggest takeaway. And like I'm really glad my parents kind of like edged me into sports a little, even though I wasn't that receptive when I was really young, because like I feel like it's a really big part of who I am now.
Nice. Nice. And that's interesting that you say that your parents helped to, you know, like kind of push you into it, even though it wasn't something you're interested in. And some of the others talked about how like that's all they dreamed about since they were just a little child. So it is interesting that you can get into sports from different paths. And sometimes you have to listen to the people who love you.
Yes, I can like vividly remember like I was like younger, my parents would put me like in any sport, like just to see which ones I like liked. So like didn't like swimming or like gymnastics or like any of that. And then like I can vividly remember like I was like standing on the stairs and like we received like a tryout like brochure for like a basketball team that was like run by my school or whatever. And like I can remember my dad being like, you have to like try out, like this could be so fun. Like everyone says like you're so tall, you'd be great. Like why don't you just want to try it? And I remember like crying and being like, no, I'm so scared. And I was like, I don't want to. And then I think back and I'm like, I feel so like I'm so glad I did it. I feel so silly like being scared of trying something new, because like that trying something new was like turned out to be like one of the best parts of my life. So
But you also bring out a good point. You said earlier that you thought of yourself as an introvert. And I think that both introverts and extroverts have fears of different things. And so you're an example of how even being an introvert and even not really feeling compelled to do those things right away, once you got engaged in it, you found that there was a sport that really connected with you and that you really loved. And so even as an introvert, there could be a sport out there for young girls who are thinking that, oh, I'm too shy to do any of that. So that's, you know, I'm the opposite. I was an extrovert. So I was probably like, let's join everything. So thank you. Who else wants to share a message of inspiration for those young girls out there who might be listening?
I can. So I think I have always been an athlete, and that's like a really big part of my identity, I think. And it's something that I use. Sorry, there's a bus outside. I don't know if you
That's okay.
can.
The Zoom world.
It's something that I kind of use to ground myself, and being an athlete has always been a really big part of my mental health as well. And that's something, running wasn't always my first sport, but as I got older and life got more stressful, I've really been able to kind of use it to process my emotions and keep myself active. And it's really been beneficial in that sense. So even outside of, you know, just being part of a team and doing that kind of stuff, it can be really good for personal health and mental health and physical health and well-being. And I think all of those things are really important, and things that we kind of forget to do sometimes when the world gets stressful. So that would kind of be my message, that it can be about whatever you want. And if you need sport to kind of keep yourself grounded, that's what it has always been for me. And I'm really grateful for that and glad that I have that outlet in my own life.
Great. You make a good message about how sports, even though you're in a team sport, there's two parts of it for every individual. So there's that personal part that's yourself, and then there's that team part. So when you're with the team, you're in team sports, but as an athlete that belongs to a team, there's also a personal part of it that, when you go to practice or when you're preparing or when you're, getting stronger in whatever way that you do that, there's that personal individual part that's just you and your own space, and that's just as important. And every athlete has that. They have their own space as an athlete and then their space on the team as an athlete. So that was really good how you separated those two out and recognized the importance to you. Helena. Liz.
Oh, Lena, you go first.
Are you sure?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I get it, like sports aren't for everyone. Sometimes people don't want to play sports, but for those girls who do want to play, but I guess are kind of a little bit more intimidated to make that first jump and go for it, I would say to just kind of like try it. You never know until you try. And at the same time, a piece of advice that's always helped me growing up, whenever I get nervous for anything, is to let those nerves drive you, which was really weird when I first heard it, because I was like, how are you nervous and you still use that to do better? Like, it just didn't make sense. But growing up and being older now, wiser, I definitely understand what it means now. So it's basically just like, everyone feels nervous, it's okay, like we're all human, but to take those nerves and kind of focus it in more, and to just let that be what you focus on when you're making those tough decisions and having to push for something, and just kind of think about it like in the long run, I guess, too. I know that like I was kind of just like naturally pushed into sports. No one really forced me to do it. But if you definitely have that drive, in the long run, it'll pay off, and you just don't know where it could take you. So I think that's like kind of like the most exciting part. But yeah, I would definitely say it's all worth it.
Nice. Liz.
Yeah, so I'm gonna start mine with a quick story. I have a lot of stories. But my going into my sophomore year, I really wanted to make varsity for my school, and I was pretty nervous. And a lot of times I compared myself to the people around me, like, oh, she hits the ball a little bit harder than me, but I think I might be better at defense than her. And it just became very overwhelming. And Jen just kind of said to me, she's like, Liz, she's like, you need to calm down. She's like, just relax, you're fine. And so the day she gave me a note and she told me, she said, don't open this until the day your tryout. And I still have it. It's still hanging in my room. And it just says, Liz, go be you. You're going to kill it. And that it's so simple, go be you, but that really just means so much to me, because so many times people try to be what other people want them to be. They try to change who they are to fit in with the situation, but at the end of the day, it's boring if everyone's the same and everyone, has the same opinions and personality. And the world needs so many more people that are just not afraid to go and just be their complete selves, no matter how that looks. And so I think it applies to sports. I think it applies to just life in general as well, which is why it's so important to me, is that the best thing that anyone can do for themselves is to just go be you and be yourself.
Yeah, great story.
Sorry, I kind of have a follow-up off of Liz's story, was like traveling all the time. I kind of found myself trying to fit in with everyone else and be like wherever I was. So that became really tough for me because I didn't really know who I was, if that made sense. But whenever it came to sports, I always knew like, okay, like I'm fast, I can pass, I could do all this. So like I think sports is like the one place where I was able to find my identity, and it was consistent. And I was just very thankful for that, because moving around, it can get tough. But when you have something that you can rely on, like sports, it makes it so much easier to adjust. So I just want to share that.
Thank you. Liz, I had an opposite experience. My girlfriend and I tried out for this dance company. And, we walked into the room and there was all these like amazing dancers, and it's a small town. So we knew everybody and we knew that they were all amazing. And so we talked to each other and we basically just said, we're not going to get in, so let's just have fun. And we both got in, but we were just being ourselves and we were having fun. So, we went in with the idea that it wasn't going to happen for us. And it did, because like you said, we were just ourselves and we did what we knew how to do. So that was really important. We're going to close with this last thought. And this is really around how sports media is so dedicated to male athletes and not female. So here we are doing a Zoom featuring women athletes. And so we're hopefully adding to that, increasing that 3.5% or 3.4%. But do you guys have any ideas about how that can change and what we can do as women and girls to make that change happen?
I know sorry. Okay. I know one thing I see a lot in sports media with women's sports, I think I can specifically see women's basketball is you'll see posts about women's basketball games or accomplishments, and there'll be a lot of comments about trying to belittle or take away the greatness of what these women have done or are doing. And people say don't take it seriously, or they think this is a joke, women's sports don't matter. And I think it's hard a lot of the times on I wouldn't say in the internet to speak to people, but I think what's more important is when you speak to people that you're close to, your friends, your family, even if you just hear someone talking like this, or you need to let them know why can't women do exactly what men are doing? Look at all these accomplishments they're doing. These ladies are so tough. And I think that's just when you're around people, it's important to stand up for what you believe in and let people know what's right, and that women are capable, just as capable as men. And I think that just goes with when you're in your personal experiences, how can you make that difference by just using your voice?
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, to definitely use your voice and, speak out when those negative messages are coming out, and really stick up for your sport and other people's sports. Divya, I'll tell you a cute story. When my kids were little, they played basketball, and I worked at a college and I had a girls basketball team, and their coach told them that they should go with me to all the basketball games because they can learn a lot from the girl basketball players. So I used to bring my kids, I have two sons, to basketball games when the girls played, so that they could watch girls playing basketball. And so they did. So good message about that. So other things about how we can, encourage and change the trajectory of how sports is devoted to men athletes. Who wants to share? Anybody?
I can share. I guess something really interesting that I've kind of noticed is right around when the Olympics starts to come up, that's when girls start getting in the media more, because it's oh, the US women's national team for soccer, they're trying to defend their title and all this stuff. And then as soon as the Olympics are done, it just kind of shuts down. And I'm why does it take a literal game between everyone in the world where women have been successful for women to be in the media, when they've been practicing, they've been playing the entire time? How do you think they got there? It didn't just poof, happen out of nowhere. They've been working, they've been doing so much. And I think that women, in sports, they should be celebrated, not just for something as big as the Olympics. I know one person that I think super cool is Simone Biles, and the fact that she's been able to stay in the media despite the fact that, the Olympics were canceled. They were over a couple years ago, but just the fact that, we should be celebrating these just beyond the event, especially because of what it represents. Our Simone Biles, she's the best gymnast of all time, and her background and story is just so impactful that, you know, I'm so glad that it didn't just fizzle out after she won her gold medals and that it's continued. And I think to just kind of keep things growing, you know, women and their backgrounds and their stories should be celebrated as much as possible. And, you know, like even simple things like there's people who like, there's celebrities obviously marry each other, but so many times they'll lead off with like, oh, like JJ Watt's wife. I'm like, no, she's a professional soccer player and she's like really good. Like use her name. Like obviously she's married to him, but like there's so much more. So I think just kind of giving women their own identity and celebrating what they do and all the hard work that they put into it is something that can help and that should be done in social media.
Yeah, you are so right. So my husband played tennis when we first moved to Pittsburgh, and I met all his tennis friends, and they would always call me Ted's wife, Ted's wife, Ted's wife. And I was like, why can't I be my own self? So I used to like always call them out on it. And so then they started calling my husband, Barbara's husband. So I won that battle with them. They knew better. Helena.
Yeah, so I think we need more National Women in Sports Days.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I'm going to get you guys together more often. There's lots of, there's Women's History Month. There's all these different special months. And so we'll have something special and we'll talk about sports no matter what the month is.
I love that. But yeah, I guess like to be like more serious, maybe we just need like more coverage in general on women's sports. Like from news or social media accounts, kind of like how Liz was saying, Simone Biles has stayed in the social media realm. Like I know she's just like she's a funny person. She engages a lot of people. Yeah. And obviously you can't tell everyone, oh, be like Simone Biles, but I don't know. I just feel like we should start supporting them on platforms we can support them on and just kind of hope that eventually brings everything up. But yeah, I would definitely say just more coverage in general.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you. Taylor.
I think we need some like women supporting women action, right? Like, I think we need to do what we can to support women in sports. I always make my dad watch the women's national team when they're on TV and, you know, watching visas or whatever we can do to like, you know, get the media more coverage so that they feel like they need to prioritize women in sports too, because that's what we want to see. You know, like I think the more we can do as female athletes also to teach our peers around us that women are also equal in sports. Like, you know, sometimes the guys will be like, well, your times aren't as fast or whatever. And it's like, no, like we need to celebrate what our team is doing too, you know, like it's not just about you, sorry. And, you know, like being able to teach guys from a younger age that female athletes are equal as well, I think is really important because sometimes I think they can perpetuate that culture. So maybe that's something we think about for next year, you know, teaching young men and showing them too what it's like to be a woman in sports and all of the things that we go through. Little story, like we, you know, running through the city, sometimes we get catcalled a lot and those situations, like we were chased down Murray once and that wasn't great. And like, you know, explaining these things to the boys, they're like, that didn't happen. And like, you sit there and you're like, no, like, it did. And like, this is how we feel. And they're like, well, no one would actually do that. We're like, yes, like you need to sit here and process this and like understand what we go through and like do our best to educate them and help them understand like who we are as athletes and the things that we go through to do what we do every day.
When my sons were younger, I intentionally had them, they had a female doctor, medical doctor, and they had a female dentist. And I intentionally did that because I didn't want them to grow up thinking the world was all men. And so because I could do that as their mother, I did. So thank you all for sharing. I think that this was a great opportunity, and I'm happy that YWCA Greater Pittsburgh was able to highlight and feature all four of you. And since our mission is eliminating racism and empowering women, I do not plan on waiting an entire year till next year, but I would love to bring you back to have some more discussions that we can, again, talk about women and girls, and really help our community to be inspired by your words and your stories and your leadership. So thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having us. I mean, I might be speaking for the group, but we would love to come back and do something like this again. This was so fun. This is honestly probably what's going to make my day, because I have classes and stuff, and like the fact that strong women are here talking about their stories, and we're all like, yes, you go, girl. That's just so special.
Yeah, I'm honestly learning more than I thought I ever would, like just having regular conversations with them. Yeah, so thank you so much for having us. It was so much fun.
Absolutely. All
I
right.
appreciate it. It's so empowering just to like be around a group of strong girls that are passionate about what they do, and just to have a good conversation in the morning to start off the day.
Aw. Well, we can do this more often for sure. We're going to make it happen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You guys have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All of you,
Talk to you
girls
soon.
and women in sports. Cheers.
Bye.
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 Thanks, Daniela.
Bye, Barbara.